Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and tonight I'll be talking about Deranged. Also known as Deranged Confessions of a Necrophile, this is a 1974 psychological horror film, more specifically a serial killer film loosely based on the crimes of Ed Gein. For those of you who don't know, Ed Gein was an American serial killer who was active in the late 1940s and early 1950s. With this case in specific, the term serial killer is used loosely because on paper he's confirmed to have killed 2 people and, robbed a bunch of graves, but he is suspected to have killed upwards of 7 more people. I tend to believe he may have killed a few more than 2 people, but we can't say for certain because records are spotty at that time period. But aside from murder, what he's most commonly known for was, like I said earlier, grave robbing. For those of you who don't know, he wasn't robbing graves for money or jewelry or anything like that. He was robbing the graves for bodies, specifically to fill the void that his deceased mother left because he couldn't get to her body. So he started taking bodies of women that looked like her back home, and he made skin suits, masks, furniture, all kinds of weird shit, like a nipple belt. He had a box full of vulvas. I think the youngest of which, or the freshest of which, police said was of a 15-year-old girl. Whether she was recently buried or murdered, I have no idea, but that's pretty fucked up. And, facts like that make me tend to believe he may have killed more than just the 2 people, being the tavern owner, I think Mary Hogan, and the other woman, Bernice Warden. But, yeah, really fucked up guy. I wouldn't technically use the term serial killer either. I'd say ghoul is a more fitting term because, yeah, you think ghoul when you hear the grave robbing and like the skin wearing and the furniture making, like all that fucking weird shit. Apparently he was heavily inspired by like pulp comics and specifically stories of Elsa Koch, who is the bitch of Buchenwald, like Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, which is pretty crazy. Reading these stories in pulp magazines, stories of not only Nazi atrocities, but, jungle headhunters, shit like that. And, throughout the years since his arrest and since his crimes came to light, there have been many, kind of myths and legends around this guy, specifically the story itself, with various, tweaks to the narrative. And, different people have different accounts of what happened or what was found at his house. This is most commonly seen with the new adaptation of this true story from that dumb fucking piece of shit Ryan Murphy. Those of you know what I'm talking about is that Ed Gein show, or Monster Ed Gein. I will say the Dahmer show was decent, although it had some inaccuracies. Also, it was more closely accurate to the case. This Ed Gein show is way off into fucking fantasy land. It got me so pissed off I didn't even finish it. I stopped at episode 7. Was gonna do a review of it, because it's new. I thought it might get some more views, more people would be engaged, and I genuinely wanted it to be a good show. It seemed like it could have been interesting, but lo and behold, after the first episode, it did that typical Ryan Murphy bullshit and completely skidded and crashed off the fucking rails into an explosive fireball of shit. What I mean by this is from episode 2 onward, the series completely drifts off into fucking fantasy soap opera territory. It completely makes shit up. It rewrites actual real life people into fucked up caricature opposites of what they actually were. The worst of which was Bernice Warden being written as like an amphetamine addicted pill popping whore. Also, you get Ed Gein's quote unquote girlfriend and her fucking adventures in New York City. It was a very fucking stupid, degrading, pretentious, edgy, fucking over-sexualized, pretty much fetishized, and extra brutal for no reason, stupid fucking adaptation. And how Ryan Murphy hasn't been sued for making this fucking surprises me. And it doesn't really surprise me is that Netflix put all this money into this fucking turd. But anyway, I digress. It's a shit show. As you can tell, it gets a fat fucking 0 for me if there was a review, which it won't fucking get, aside from that rant. But, after watching it and seething for a few days, I was thinking about the other Ed Gein related material out there. And of course, I could have covered Psycho, I could have covered Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I could have covered Silence of the Lambs. And they're all great movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is actually one of my all-time favorite horror movies. But I feel like every one of those have been reviewed a billion times plus. So I wanted to pick something that maybe was a little less familiar with people. Something that's more on the cult side, and something that's a little bit more grimy. But of course, there was a really nice Blu-ray and 4K put out of this not that long ago that was also unrated. So I feel like more people might know of this movie now. But still, again, I don't see a lot of people talk about it. So I thought that this would be my best shot at picking one. And, for the longest time, Deranged was actually considered the closest to a true adaptation of the Ed Gein story on film. That was, of course, until In the Light of the Moon came out in 2000, I believe, which was also just called Ed Gein. But, aside from a few name changes and a few, obvious dramatizations, this movie is very accurate to the story. The only things that were changed, of course, were a few names. Like, instead of Ed Gein, the killer's name is Ezra Cobb. There's a body count of 3 in this movie, 2 of which are pretty young women. Whereas in real life, the 2 women that were killed would be a lot closer to the first woman killed in the movie. So, like, a more plus-size woman in her 50s. But, aside from that, it doesn't go completely over the top. You don't have them running around killing people with a chainsaw. That's for damn sure. It does take some liberties, but again, it's still a very close to the story movie, and it's pretty fucking good. It's pretty grimy. The gore effects are nasty. Also pretty interesting. I believe this was Tom Savini's second movie, so of course his gore effects are always great. And I believe the first movie he did was Death Dream by Bob Clark, and the only reason why I mentioned that is because I believe Bob Clark was an uncredited producer for this film. And the reason why he didn't do this one is because he said the subject matter was just too disturbing for him. So he passed and he got his buddy Jeff Gillian to do it. And what's funny about that is Jeff Gillian was actually the Santa Claus from fucking A Christmas Story, which is another Bob Clark movie. And of course, Bob Clark, the other Christmas movie he did was Black Christmas. I don't know why I fucking spaced on that. But yeah, so it all comes full circle. It's pretty fucking interesting. But why don't we dive into this movie? So, of course, Deranged Confessions of a Necrophile, which, by the way, title's a little misleading because in real life, there's no confirmation that Ed Gein actually fucked the bodies. In his words, he said they smelled too bad, but that hasn't stopped creators and directors and story writers from writing that in as a true fact that he did that. But having said that, necrophile is an appropriate subtitle to this because it doesn't necessarily mean someone who fucks bodies. That's a necrophiliac. A necrophile is someone who has an obsessive fascination with death and corpses. So this subheading actually does make sense, and this movie doesn't go into fucking Ryan Murphy fucked up territory and showing Ed Gein fuck a body a bunch of fucking times. So yeah, that's pretty good on this movie for not going into that territory. Although it does, depending on the cut you have, it does veer into the cannibalism thing, which is pretty interesting because that's a hugely debated topic with the Ed Gein case. Some people say he was a cannibal. Some people say he wasn't. Again, we don't have confirmation on that. If you have the unrated cut of the movie, there's a scene where he eats a victim's brains out of their skull with an ice cream scoop. My version, unfortunately, does not have that because I have the MGM Presents Midnight Movies Double Feature Edition that came with both Deranged and Motel Hell. So my version doesn't have the cannibalism, so I like to think that it's not cut, it's just more accurate to the story. But, that would be a cool scene to see. So if anyone's got it or knows where, if it's on YouTube, shoot me a link because that would be cool to see. But, for all intents and purposes, my version is the cut version. Anyway, Deranged Confessions of a Necrophile, directed by Jeff Gillian and Alan Ormsby. Screenplay by Alan Ormsby. Produced by Tom Carr, starring Roberts Blossom, Cosette Lee, Leslie Carlson, Robert Warner, and Mickey Moore. Cinematography by Jack McGowan. Music by Carl Zitterer. Production company Carr International Pictures. Distributed by American International Pictures. And released on February 8th, 1974. So this is actually what I like to call the missing link in the Gein movies, if you will. And what I mean by that is this is a post-Psycho, pre-Texas Chainsaw Massacre Gein movie. This actually did come out a few months before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I believe that came out in, I think, the summer or fall of 74, I want to say. But yeah, definitely Deranged came out first. Technically second if you count 3 on a Meat Hook. But while being partially inspired by the crimes of Ed Gein, 300 Meat Hook goes in its own separate direction. Those of you who've seen it will know what I'm talking about. But for all intents and purposes, yeah, Deranged is the missing link Gein movie, being the one that came before Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Funny enough too, because it's going to say here countries listed are both Canada and the United States. That's because this movie was actually filmed in Oshawa, Ontario. The reason why is because I believe when they actually originally wanted to film it in Plainfield and in Wisconsin, of course, and they were told absolutely fuck no. So then they went around to the other towns in Wisconsin that were close, and they were all given the boot also. So they ended up settling on Canada, and I think this had something to do with Bob Clark, because most, if not all of his movies are filmed in Canada, but also because it was a form of a tax break and it was cheaper to film movies in Canada, especially if you were an American company. So it wasn't uncommon for a lot of like horror movies and slasher movies from the 70s and 80s to actually be filmed up here, which is pretty fucking cool. They also filmed it in the winter time to give it more of an accurate feel to the story, and it also kind of gives off this like cold, dead feeling that just engulfs the whole film, which is pretty gnarly, dude. And it says here the budget was $200,000, but I don't have a direct box office return. So of course this was a cult movie and actually sort of a lost movie for a while. So after its release in 1974, it kind of disappeared. And then it was rediscovered, I believe, in a storage container in Florida in the mid-90s. And then after it was, discovered, it was released by America International Pictures on VHS. And then there was actual plans for them to make a Deranged Part 2 in 1993, but that never happened. And of course, America International Pictures is a parent company of MGM. And MGM is the company that ended up releasing the DVD that I watched that I'm reviewing right now. So a lot of crazy lore with this movie, but it's pretty fucking cool. It's pretty interesting. I hope you guys think it's pretty fucking interesting. But side note, the MGM DVD is like part of the Midnight Movie double feature series, or Midnight Movie series. This is just one of the double feature ones. Really cool line. I loved when MGM did this. I believe one or two other companies had their own midnight movies. They all looked similar with the blue neon lights, so I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure at least one or two other companies did them. And when I bought this back in the day, I actually was seeking this out for the Motel Hell feature, or the Side B movie, and over time, Deranged has actually become my favorite movie on this DVD. Like, Motel Hell is pretty cool, but it's way different. It's more of like a parody of Texas Chainsaw and movies like that. So it's a totally different vibe. Deranged is kind of straight up serious. It's got moments of dark comedy, kind of matching Ed Gein's real life gallows humor. But for all intents and purposes, it is a straight up horror film. It's very creepy and like gross. But yeah, I've always thought that was funny. Like I scoured all the video stores that were closing down to find this specifically for Motel Hell. And I ended up liking the other movie, the extra, I guess you'd want to call it, way more than what I looked for. So pretty cool DVD. I know it's pretty rare. I think the other releases was Desert Island put out one, but I'm not sure how rare that one is. There's a German DVD that I heard is the uncut version, which is pretty surprising considering most German releases of horror movies are cut to shit. So if you got a region-free DVD player, pick that one up. Or if you have a fucking Blu-ray 4K, whatever the fuck it's called, player, get the Arrow release, because that is also uncut, cleaned up, supposed to look really nice. Yeah, so it is kind of hard to find on DVD, but the newer releases are easier to find. Definitely pick it up because this movie is fucking crazy. And without further ado, let's talk about the story now, okay? So basically, typical Ed Gein shit. It's about this guy named Ezra Cobb who operates a farm in the rural Midwest with his elderly mother, Amanda. She's a religious fanatic, borderline, or not even borderline, she is a straight-up misogynist who has warped Ezra since childhood. Although in this movie, we don't really get to see his childhood. We don't even get to see his brother or his father die, but it doesn't matter. This movie's pretty fast. It kind of just jumps right in, starting off with Amanda's death. And from that point on, Ezra becomes very withdrawn. His friends in the area, or his friend, I should say, encourages him to, go out on the dating scene. And he meets this, fucked up spinster woman that his mother actually told him to meet when she dies. And in my opinion, this is probably like the worst scene in the movie. He goes on this date with her at her place, and she apparently claims to be a clairvoyant who, after hearing Ezra talking about his schizophrenic shit where he's like, I talked to my mother, she's like, I talked to my dead husband. And it's just such a cringy scene where she's like, and I think it's meant to be this way to show that she's not all there upstairs, but it's just so unintentionally hilarious, and it draws on for so long where she's like pretending to channel her dead husband, and she's using like a deep man voice to basically pretend like she's the husband's ghost telling Ezra that it's okay to fuck her. And he basically goes to fuck this crazy bitch, and then he pulls out a gun and kills her. And that's the catalyst to this whole fucking thing. He ends up digging up his mother's body. Actually, no, he starts the grave robbing, then the murders. Sorry, I got that all twisted. Yeah. So as soon as his mother dies, he ends up digging up her corpse and bringing it back to the house, which in real life, Ed Gein did not do that because his mother, Augusta, was buried with like a giant cinder block of concrete over her. It's almost like she preemptively knew that he was going to do something to her body, and she was like, fuck that. But so in real life, he couldn't get her body, and I think that's what drove him progressive. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I wasn't there in the house. Only Ed knows this. But I think that was kind of the catalyst that spun him, because all the bodies he ended up stealing were bodies of middle-aged women that looked like his mom or would have looked like his mom. But in this movie, excuse me, Ezra Cobb ends up getting his mother's body, and then every other extra body he gets after that is like company or friends for his mother, which is pretty fucking wild. But yeah, after he steals a bunch of bodies, the urge really fucking goes nuts when he goes to the spinster's house, tries to fuck her, and then shoots the shit out of her, brings her body back, and then I guess grafts her face to mother's face because he realizes his mom's corpse had been buried for at least over a year. So she started rotting, and he's trying to put it all together with like fish skin and wax. But then he realizes synthetic skin won't work. What's better than synthetic skin? Real skin. Starts sealing it, but also develops a bloodlust. The next two murders in the movie, one of them is this bar maiden whose name is Mary Ransom. She's pretty fine 70s looking babe, you know? So it's kind of weird because, again, Ed Gein's kills were like bigger, older ladies, whereas in this movie, the last two kills are younger, more TNA-esque ladies. So, yeah, he picks up this, well, he doesn't even pick up, he kind of just stalks this Mary woman outside of her bar, and then he, you know, sabotages her tire as a way to coax her to come back to his place. Then once he gets her there, he does some weirdo shit where he disappears into the house, and then she goes in, and we get to see Ezra's collection of like bodies and skulls on posts and shit. And there's this really cool scene where he's like hidden amongst all the other bodies wearing a skin mask. He chases her around the house, and he does a proto Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner with her before it ends up bludgeoning her to shit with this fucking femur bone that he also uses as a drumstick. It's pretty fucking wild. And then the last kill is, instead of it being like, you know, Bernice Warden and her son, the deputy, it's this young girl who works at the hardware store. And her boyfriend is, I guess, this hunter guy whose dad happens to be friends with him being Ezra. So one day when Ezra's chilling at his friend's house and his friend's son comes home with the girlfriend, he gets fixated on her, stalks her back to the hardware store, shoots her, puts her in the truck. She runs off, and he, you know, shoots her again, takes her back, strings her up naked in the barn, and proceeds to get ready to skin her. And then the movie ends. The thing that I like the most about this movie is all the scenes that take place in the house. They're few and far between. Like, there's two that really stick out to me. It's like, you know, toward the ending when he gets caught, but also when he's chasing after Mary Ransom. The way the house looked, it was just grimy, disgusting. It wasn't too over the top or anything. You got to see some of the masks and all the corpses. It felt like a pulp comic. It felt like a Tales from the Crypt comic from the 50s. It just had a very pulpish feel to it. Very grimy. It looked nasty. I just loved it. And that also lends to the gore effects, which, funny enough, were done by Tom Savini. So again, this whole thing goes full circle. You got Bob Clark, Tom Savini, and Jeff Gillian all here. But Tom Savini's effects really shone through in this movie. I mean, the blood was a little too red. It kind of gave Dawn of the Dead, like 1978 vibes, where it was like very high contrast red. But the decomposed, mummified corpses, I thought looked fucking amazing in this movie. Robert's Blossom was great as Ezra Cobb. He was really weird and like, deranged. But funny enough, Harvey Keitel and Christopher Walken actually both auditioned for this role. So it was interesting reading that because like I was trying to picture what they would have brought to the table playing this. And I mean, it would have been cool to see either one of them there. But this dude, Robert's Blossom, he played it well. He didn't ham it up too hard. Again, like a lot of people are praising fucking what's his name from Sons of Anarchy for his portrayal of Ed Gein, but I mean, if you look into it, there's little things like how his hooded eye is on the wrong side and how Ed Gein's voice was never high pitched like that. It's just like, it's a caricature. It's hammy. It's just bullshit. By comparison, Robert's Blossom's version of Ed Gein was closer to what we know of the real life version. It wasn't over the top or crazy. I mean, there was a couple moments like with the bone drum, but who knows? Maybe he was fucking weird like that. The guy wore a fucking mammary vest and self-made pussy pants and danced in the fucking moonlight. The guy wasn't all there, but at least in this movie, it stuck with what was depicted in the case, and it didn't fucking make shit up for the sake of being it. I mean, it's hard to say because it definitely tweaked some shit around, but it didn't add kills and it didn't go over the fucking top with chainsaws and shit, to make a more interesting story. It's actually one of the more low-key Ed Gein movies, especially if you compare it to Ed Gein, Butcher of Plainfield with Kane fucking Hodder, Jason. But yeah, this movie was awesome. Would it be rated as a 10? I don't think so, because even though it's only about an hour and 20 minutes, it kind of like drags a little, especially if you're like as baked as I am right now. Definitely not a movie to watch while you're ripping the bong. It's probably smoke a joint and watch it, because I was ripping bowls and I was kind of passing out toward the midway, which isn't a good sign, but I'm not trying to deter you guys from this movie. It is like, it's a 50-year-old movie. It's going to be a little slow at times, but if you want something that's creepy and it's got really good atmosphere and something that, kind of respects its fucking source material, I'd say check this movie out. I'd probably have to rate it about an 8.5 out of 10 because, while it is good, it isn't perfect or anything. Texas Chainsaw Massacre will always be my favorite adaptation of this case, even though it is a very hyperbolic, exaggerated, made-up version of the Ed Gein story. But in terms of, close to the money, real-life thing, I'd say this and In the Light of the Moon are up there as two of the best ones or two of the better ones you can watch. So, yeah, solid 8.5 out of 10. I highly recommend this one. Like I said earlier, the DVD for this is pretty hit and miss. I don't know how rare that German version is or the Desert Island one is. I do know the Midnight Movie version I have is rare as fuck, and I just happened to luck out and find that at a video store that was closing down. But if you have that Midnight Movie version, don't be deterred or feel bad that it's a cut version. I call it the more historically accurate version. It's a very solid DVD. The Midnight Movie ones are very cool. It's one of my favorite. I think it's one of the first collections or subcategory or sub-lined movies things or series or whatever that was put out that I started collecting, shit in the vein of Shout Factory or Blue Underground or, Trauma, stuff like that. But, yeah, no, great movie. Pretty cool double feature that comes with it. Maybe I'll cover Motel Hell sometime in the future around Halloween or whatever. But yeah, Deranged. Deranged Confessions of a Necrophile. Grimy, sick, fucked up, low key, but pretty fucking cool. Highly recommend. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I got a pretty sick zombie movie coming in tomorrow, so hopefully, for the long weekend, I might have a review for it out, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Don't forget to pack a fat fucking bowl and rip the shit out of it. Peace!